The hidden camera footage arrived in my email at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, with the subject line, "Thought you should know." No sender name, just a generic Gmail account that would disappear by morning. But the 23 minutes of high-definition betrayal it contained would burn itself into my retinas forever. My name is Nick Ransom, and I'm about to tell you how I served my cheating wife and backstabbing brother the coldest dish of revenge this side of hell. But first, let me paint you a picture of the perfect suburban lie I'd been living. Our house on Maple Street looked like something from a home improvement magazine. Emily made sure of that. White picket fence, manicured lawn, seasonal decorations that changed with mathematical precision. Inside, everything coordinated. Throw pillows matched curtains, which matched the carefully arranged books nobody actually read. Emily Ransom, my wife of 16 years, was the queen of this domestic theater. 36 years old, blonde hair always perfectly styled, clothes that screamed, "I have my life together." She worked in HR at Morrison & Associates, where she specialized in making other people's lives miserable while maintaining her sweet professional smile. Then, there was my brother Matt, 2 years younger, 6 inches taller, and blessed with the kind of natural charisma that made people gravitate toward him at parties, while I stood in corners making sarcastic observations to myself. Matt owned Apex Fitness, the most successful gym in our little corner of suburban Ohio. He drove a red Mustang, wore designer workout clothes as everyday attire, and had never met a mirror he didn't like. The three of us had this tradition, Sunday lunch every week. Emily insisted on it. "Family is everything, Nick," she'd say, squeezing my shoulder in that patronizing way that made my skin crawl. "We need to stay connected." What I didn't know was just how connected my wife and brother had become. The footage showed them in our bedroom, my bedroom, on a Thursday afternoon when I was supposed to be in Cleveland for a project meeting. The meeting had been canceled, but I hadn't bothered to call home. Why would I? I trusted my wife. Stupid me. The camera angle was perfect, capturing everything in crystal clear detail. Emily's little gasps of pleasure, Matt's smug grin, the way they talked about me afterward while sharing a cigarette Emily claimed she'd quit years ago. "He's so clueless," Emily laughed, blowing smoke toward our wedding photo on the nightstand. "I can't believe he hasn't figured it out." Matt stretched like a satisfied cat. "Nick always was slow on the uptake. Remember in high school when it took him 3 months to realize Jenny Morrison was flirting with him?" "Poor Nick," Emily said with mock sympathy. "Always the last to know." They had no idea how right they were about that. I sat in my home office, watching my marriage implode in high definition, and felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Not rage, that would come later. This was something cleaner, sharper. This was the moment Nick Ransom, mild-mannered IT project manager, died, and something much more dangerous took his place. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up and tell you about the weeks leading up to that email, when I was still playing the role of the oblivious husband. The signs were there, of course. They always are. Emily had started working out more, buying new underwear, taking longer showers. She developed a sudden interest in Matt's business, always asking about his latest clients, his expansion plans, his financial situation. "Matt's doing so well with the gym," she'd say over dinner. "He's thinking about opening a second location. Maybe you could help him with the business plan, Nick. You're so good with numbers." I should have been suspicious when she started volunteering me for things that would get me out of the house. Suddenly, I was the go-to guy for every weekend home improvement project in the neighborhood, every after-work networking event, every out-of-town conference that came up. "You work so hard, honey," Emily would coo, packing my suitcase with suspicious enthusiasm. "You deserve to get out and see the world." Meanwhile, Matt had become a fixture at our house. His gym bag lived in our hall closet. His protein shakes filled our refrigerator. His muddy running shoes sat by our back door like he owned the place. "Matt's been helping me with that loose board on the deck," Emily would explain when I found evidence of his presence. And the kitchen faucet was dripping again. You know how handy he is. Handy. That was one word for it. The Sunday lunches became increasingly painful. Emily would fuss over Matt like he was visiting royalty, making his favorite foods, laughing at his stupid jokes, touching his arm when she talked to him. Meanwhile, I got the leftovers of her attention, distracted smiles, half-hearted responses to my attempts at conversation, the general sense that I was interrupting something important. "Nick, you should really take better care of yourself," Matt would say, patting his flat stomach while eyeing my slight paunch. "I keep telling you I'll give you a free membership to the gym. We could work out together." "Thanks, but I get enough exercise jumping to conclusions," I'd reply, not knowing how accurate that would prove to be. Emily would laugh, actually laugh, at Matt's thinly veiled insults while treating my comebacks like social embarrassments. "Nick, be nice. Matt's just trying to help." Help himself to my wife, apparently. The breaking point came 3 weeks before the email arrived. I came home early from work with a migraine and found Matt's Mustang in our driveway. Nothing unusual there. He'd been coming by more and more often. But when I walked into the house, I heard Emily's laughter coming from upstairs. Not just any laughter, the kind of breathless, giddy giggling I hadn't heard from her in years. I called out, "Honey, I'm home!" Sudden silence. Then, Emily's voice, slightly strained. "Oh, Nick, you're early!" Footsteps overhead. Whispered voices. More footsteps. Emily appeared at the top of the stairs, hair slightly mussed, cheeks flushed. "I was just showing Matt the new curtains in the guest room. He has such good taste in decorating." Matt appeared behind her, grinning that easy, confident grin that had charmed teachers, girlfriends, and apparently my wife. "Hey, brother. How's the corporate grind treating you?" "Like a meat grinder," I said, studying their faces. Slow and painful. That night, Emily was unusually affectionate. Guilty conscience intimacy, I realize now. At the time, I just thought my luck was changing. 3 days later, I installed a hidden camera in our bedroom. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was a terrible husband for not trusting my wife. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be lies. The camera was a tiny thing, no bigger than a button, hidden in the decorative lamp on Emily's side of the bed. State-of-the-art surveillance equipment that I'd ordered online using my company credit card. If anyone asked, it was for a security audit at work. For 2 weeks, the camera recorded nothing but Emily making the bed, folding laundry, and talking on the phone to her mother about how hard I worked and how little time we spent together. "I just feel so disconnected from him, Mom," she said one afternoon, sitting on the edge of our bed in her work clothes. "It's like we're roommates, not husband and wife. Sometimes I wonder if he'd even notice if I wasn't here." I felt a stab of guilt listening to that. Maybe I had been working too much. Maybe I had been taking her for granted. Maybe the problem wasn't Emily cheating. Maybe it was me being a lousy husband. Then came Thursday, October 15th, the day my marriage died and my education in revenge began. I was supposed to be in Cleveland until Friday evening. The Morrison Industries project meeting that would determine whether my company got a $1 million contract. I'd been preparing for weeks, running scenarios, checking and double-checking every detail. The call came at 6:30 a.m. as I was loading my suitcase into the car. "Nick, it's Janet from Morrison Industries. I'm afraid we need to postpone today's meeting. Mr. Morrison's father had a heart attack last night and he's flying to Phoenix to be with his family." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, genuinely meaning it. "Is there anything I can do? Just stay flexible on rescheduling. We'll be in touch early next week." I should have called Emily immediately, should have told her I'd be home, maybe suggested we spend the day together. Instead, I decided to surprise her. Maybe take her out to lunch, show her that I could be spontaneous, that our marriage still had some spark left in it. I spent the morning at the office catching up on other projects, then drove home around noon with a bouquet of flowers and reservations at her favorite restaurant. Matt's Mustang was in our driveway again. This time, I didn't announce my arrival. The front door was unlocked. The house was quiet except for sounds coming from upstairs. Sounds that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. I stood in our foyer, flowers wilting in my grip, listening to my wife having the kind of passionate intimacy we hadn't had in years. With my brother, in my bed, I could have stormed upstairs, could have kicked down the door, started screaming, maybe thrown a few punches. That's what the old Nick would have done. Make a scene, get emotional, give them the chance to turn it around on me somehow. Instead, I quietly set the flowers on the hall table, walked back to my car, and drove to the office. I spent the rest of the day in meetings, acting like nothing had happened, while my hidden camera recorded every detail of my wife's betrayal. The footage arrived in my email that night like a gift from a very dark angel. 23 minutes of high-definition adultery, complete with post-coital conversation that revealed this wasn't their first time together. Not even close. "How long do you think we can keep this up?" Emily asked, tracing patterns on Matt's chest. "As long as you want," Matt replied. "Nick's not exactly the suspicious type, and even if he was, what's he going to do about it? Fight me?" They both laughed at that. My wife and my brother, laughing at the idea that I might actually stand up for myself. "Still," Emily said, "I feel bad sometimes. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve this. Good men finish last, Em. You said it yourself. You need more excitement in your life. Nick's never going to give you that. He's too busy with his spreadsheets and his project timelines." "You're right," Emily sighed. "I just wish things could be different. Simpler." "They could be," Matt said quietly. "You know they could be." Emily was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'm not ready for that conversation yet. But you're thinking about it." "I'm thinking about a lot of things." I watched this exchange 3 times before the full implications hit me. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning a future together. A future that apparently didn't include me. That's when the rage finally came. Not the hot, explosive kind that makes you do stupid things. This was cold rage, the kind that calculates and plans and waits for the perfect moment to strike. I had 2 weeks until our next Sunday lunch. 2 weeks to gather evidence, plan my strategy, and prepare for the most satisfying meal of my life. Emily and Matt thought they were so clever, so careful, so much smarter than poor, oblivious Nick. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The next morning, I woke up and made Emily breakfast like nothing had happened. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, fresh orange juice. I even packed her lunch, complete with a little note that said, "Have a great day, sweetheart." Emily kissed my cheek before leaving for work, and I caught a whiff of new perfume. Something expensive and sultry that definitely wasn't the vanilla body spray she'd been wearing for years. "You're in a good mood this morning," she said, seeming genuinely surprised by my attentiveness. "Just happy to be married to you," I replied with a smile that felt like broken glass in my mouth. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table and made a list. Not a to-do list, a war plan. First priority, find out exactly how long this had been going on and who else knew about it. The hidden camera had given me 1 day's worth of evidence, but I needed the full scope of their betrayal. Second priority, document everything. Photos, audio recordings, financial records, witness statements. If this ended up in divorce court, I wanted Emily to walk away with nothing but the clothes on her back. Third priority, plan the reveal. It had to be public, humiliating, and absolutely devastating. These two had been laughing at me behind my back for God knows how long. Time to give them something to really laugh about. I started with Emily's phone records. As the primary account holder, I had access to detailed billing information going back 2 years. What I found made my stomach turn. Text messages to Matt's number, 47 in January, 83 in February, 156 in March. The frequency had been building steadily since the beginning of the year. Phone calls, too, sometimes lasting hours, always when I was at work or out of town. Cross-referencing the dates with my calendar revealed a pattern that would have been obvious if I'd been paying attention. Every business trip, every late night at the office, every weekend I spent helping neighbors with their home improvement projects, Emily and Matt had been in constant contact. I felt like an idiot. The signs had been there for months, and I'd missed every single one. Next, I checked our joint credit card statements. Emily had been busy. New lingerie from Victoria's Secret, charged on days when I was traveling. Expensive dinners at restaurants we'd never been to together. A weekend at the Marriott downtown when I was supposedly visiting my college roommate in Cincinnati. But the most damning evidence was yet to come. I decided to pay Matt a visit at his gym. Apex Fitness occupied a converted warehouse in the trendy part of downtown, all exposed brick and industrial lighting. Matt had sunk every penny of his inheritance from our grandfather into the place, and it showed. Top-of-the-line equipment, motivational posters featuring impossibly fit models, a juice bar that served $20 protein smoothies. I found Matt in his office, feet up on his desk, scrolling through his phone with a smug expression that made me want to punch him in his perfect teeth. "Nick," he said, jumping up with fake enthusiasm, "what brings you to my humble empire?" "Thought I'd take you up on that gym membership offer," I lied smoothly. "Emily's been after me to get in shape." Matt's grin widened. "That's great, man. Emily's a smart woman. She knows what she wants." The double meaning wasn't lost on me, but I played dumb. "She certainly does. Speaking of which, she mentioned you might need help with a business plan for your second location." "Oh, that." Matt waved dismissively. "That's more of a long-term goal. I'm focusing on maximizing the potential of this location first. Building a solid foundation, you know." "Smart approach. How's business been?" "Fantastic. Best year yet." Matt leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the chance to brag. "I'm thinking about hiring a business manager, actually. Someone to handle the day-to-day operations while I focus on expansion." "Anyone in mind?" Matt's expression became carefully neutral. "I have some ideas. Someone with HR experience would be ideal. You know, someone who understands people, knows how to manage personalities." My blood pressure spiked, but I kept my voice casual. "Emily would be perfect for something like that. She's always talking about wanting a career change." "Emily?" Matt's attempt at surprise was Oscar-worthy. "Huh. I never thought about that, but you're right. She'd be amazing." We chatted for another 10 minutes about equipment costs and membership fees, but my mind was racing. They weren't just planning to continue their affair, they were planning to work together. Probably planning to leave their current lives behind and start fresh, building their little empire on the ashes of my marriage, over my dead body. That evening, I told Emily about my conversation with Matt. "You went to see Matt today?" she asked, and I caught the slight tension in her voice. "Yeah, finally decided to take him up on that gym membership. We got to talking about his business plans." "Oh?" Emily was chopping vegetables for dinner, but her movements had become more aggressive. "What kind of plans?" "Expansion ideas. He mentioned needing a business manager with HR experience." I paused for effect. "I suggested you." The knife slipped, and Emily cursed as she grabbed a paper towel for her finger. That's an interesting idea. But I like my job at Morrison & Associates." "Really? Because last month you were complaining about how boring it was, how you felt like you weren't reaching your potential." "I was just venting," Emily said quickly. "Every job has its frustrations." "True. But this could be a great opportunity. Working with family, building something from the ground up." Matt seemed really interested when I brought it up. Emily's face flushed. "He did?" "Very. In fact, he said he'd never thought about it before, but you'd be perfect for the job." Emily turned back to her vegetables, but I could see her mind working. "Well, It's something to think about, I suppose. That night, Emily was on her phone for 2 hours, speaking in hushed tones from the guest bedroom. When she finally came to bed, she was distracted and restless. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine," she said curtly. "Just work stuff." Right, work stuff. The next few days were a masterclass in surveillance. I followed Emily during her lunch breaks, installed tracking software on her laptop, and even hired a private investigator named Marcia Chen, a former police detective who specialized in marital infidelity cases. Marcia was a small, sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who dressed like a suburban mom and had the instincts of a bloodhound. Within 48 hours, she'd confirmed what I already suspected and uncovered details that made my stomach churn. "Your wife and brother have been meeting regularly at the Riverside Motel for the past 4 months, Marcia reported during our clandestine meeting at a coffee shop across town. "Always the same room, always paid for in cash by your brother. The desk clerk remembers them because they tip well and never cause trouble." She slid a manila envelope across the table. Photos, receipts, witness statements. "Your brother's been telling people at his gym that he's in a serious relationship with someone who's almost single. Your wife's been asking her co-workers about divorce lawyers, claiming it's for a friend." I opened the envelope with shaking hands. The photos were damning. Emily and Matt entering the motel together, leaving separately, looking relaxed and happy in a way I hadn't seen Emily look in years. "There's more," Marcia continued. "I did some digging into your brother's finances. He's been having cash flow problems with the gym, behind on his equipment loans, 3 months late on rent. But he's been spending money like he expects a windfall." "What kind of spending?" "New car down payment, expensive jewelry, a security deposit on a commercial space across town. Either he's expecting a business miracle, or he's planning to come into some money soon." The implications hit me like a freight train. They weren't just planning to run off together. They were planning to take me for everything I was worth. Emily would get half of everything in the divorce, including my share of our house, my retirement savings, and my stake in the IT consulting firm I'd helped build from the ground up. "I need more evidence," I told Marcia. "Audio recordings if possible, and I want to know everyone who's involved." "Already on it," Marcia said with a predatory smile. "Give me another week, and I'll have enough evidence to bury them both." That week felt like the longest of my life. I had to maintain the facade of the oblivious husband while my wife and brother planned my destruction right under my nose. Emily was working late more often, always with elaborate explanations about year-end projects and budget meetings. Matt was calling the house more frequently, always with transparent excuses about family gatherings or borrowed tools. The worst part was how good they'd gotten at lying. Emily would look me straight in the eye and tell me she loved me, then spend an hour on the phone with Matt planning their next rendezvous. Matt would clap me on the shoulder and call me his favorite brother, then drive straight to a motel to sleep with my wife. But I was getting good at lying too. "I'm thinking about surprising Emily for our anniversary," I told Matt during one of his increasingly frequent visits to our house. "Maybe a weekend getaway, just the two of us." Matt's expression flickered, just for a second, but I caught it. "That sounds nice, man. When's your anniversary again?" "November 15th, 2 weeks from this Sunday." Right. Emily's lucky to have a guy who remembers dates like that." "Some dates are worth remembering," I said meaningfully. That evening, Emily was unusually quiet during dinner. "Matt mentioned you're planning something special for our anniversary," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just an idea I'm playing with. Nothing concrete yet." "We don't have to do anything big, Nick. I know money's been tight with the new project at work." Money hadn't been tight at all, but Emily had been asking a lot of questions about our finances lately. Innocent questions about retirement accounts, life insurance policies, the value of our house. "Don't worry about the money," I said. "You're worth every penny." Emily smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You're sweet. Sweet. Right. Marcia called me the next morning with an update that changed everything. "I've got the audio recordings you wanted," she said. "But there's something else, something bigger." We met at the same coffee shop, and Marcia looked grim as she handed me a new envelope. "Your wife and brother aren't just having an affair," she said. "They're planning to destroy you completely." The recordings were devastating. Hours of conversations between Emily and Matt, discussing everything from my work schedule to my life insurance policy to my accident-prone tendencies. "He's always been clumsy," Emily's voice said through the tiny speaker. "Remember when we were dating? He fell down those stairs at your apartment and ended up in the emergency room." "That wasn't clumsiness," Matt replied. "That was 3 beers and bad lighting. But you're right. Nick's not exactly the most coordinated guy in the world." "It would be so easy," Emily continued. "An accident at home, maybe. Something with the ladder when he's cleaning gutters or the power tools in the garage. You know how he never follows safety protocols." My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the recorder. "Are we really talking about this?" Matt asked. "I'm just saying it would solve a lot of problems. The life insurance alone would be enough to pay off your gym debts and buy that new location. Plus my half of the house, the retirement accounts." "What about the investigation? Police? Insurance companies?" "What investigation? Nick Ransom, middle-aged IT guy with a history of minor accidents, falls off a ladder while doing home maintenance. Tragic, but not suspicious, especially with his loving wife and devoted brother there to comfort each other through the grief." I stopped the recording and stared at Marcia in shock. "There's more," she said quietly. "They've been researching your daily routines, your medical history, even your allergies. This isn't just adultery, Nick. This is conspiracy to commit murder." The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too hot, too loud. My wife, the woman I'd loved for 16 years, the woman I'd built a life with, was planning to kill me for money. "What do I do?" I asked. Marcia's smile was sharp as a blade. "You do what they least expect," she said. "You fight back." Sunday, November 15th, our wedding anniversary, and what would turn out to be the last Sunday lunch in the Ransom family tradition. I woke up that morning feeling calm for the first time in weeks. The kind of calm that comes from knowing exactly what you're going to do and having the tools to do it perfectly. Emily was already up, bustling around the kitchen in her favorite apron, the one with little hearts on it that she'd bought during our honeymoon in Napa Valley. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Happy anniversary, sweetheart," she said, giving me a kiss that tasted like lies and betrayal. 16 years. Can you believe it? "Feels like a lifetime," I replied, which was truer than she knew. Matt arrived at noon sharp, carrying a bottle of expensive wine and his usual cocky grin. He'd dressed up for the occasion, crisp white shirt, dark jeans, the kind of casual elegance that had always come naturally to him. "There's the happy couple," he said, embracing Emily a little too long and clapping me on the back with false brotherly affection. 16 years of wedded bliss. You two are an inspiration." "We certainly are," I agreed, accepting the wine. "Dom Perignon, this must have cost a fortune." Matt shrugged. "Only the best for my favorite brother and sister-in-law. Besides, business has been great lately. I can afford to splurge." Business had been terrible according to Marcia's financial investigation, but I didn't mention that. Instead, I opened the champagne and poured 3 glasses. "A toast," I said, raising my glass, "to family, to loyalty, to getting exactly what you deserve." We clinked glasses, and I watched Emily and Matt exchange a quick, meaningful look. They thought they knew what was coming. They thought they had me figured out. Poor, oblivious Nick, celebrating his anniversary while his wife and brother planned his funeral. They had no idea what I'd learned. No idea what I'd planned. No idea that this would be the last meal they'd ever share as free people. Emily had outdone herself with the food: herb-crusted leg of lamb, roasted vegetables, homemade dinner rolls, All the things that had made our Sunday lunches famous among our friends and neighbors. The dining room table was set with our good china, the crystal glasses we'd received as wedding gifts, fresh flowers from Emily's garden. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect for what I had in mind. "So," Matt said, cutting into his lamb. "Any special anniversary plans? Romantic getaway? Second honeymoon?" "Actually," I said, "I have something very special planned. Something I think you'll both remember for the rest of your lives." Emily smiled nervously. "Nick, you didn't have to—" "Oh, but I did," I interrupted. 16 years of marriage deserves a proper celebration. And I wanted to share it with family. After all, Matt, you've been such a big part of our lives lately." Matt's chewing slowed slightly. "Just trying to be a good brother." "You've been very good," I agreed. "Both of you have been so good to me. So thoughtful, so caring, always looking out for my best interests." The conversation continued in this vein for another 20 minutes, with me dropping increasingly obvious hints while Emily and Matt grew more and more uncomfortable. They kept exchanging glances, probably wondering if I knew something or if I was just being weird. Finally, as Emily was clearing the main course plates, I stood up. "Before dessert," I announced, "I have a little presentation to make, a tribute to our marriage and to the people who've made it so memorable." I walked over to the entertainment center and picked up the remote for our large-screen TV. Emily and Matt were watching me now with undisguised wariness. "Nick," Emily said carefully, "what are you doing?" "Just setting up a little slideshow," I said cheerfully. "You know how I love my technology." The screen flickered to life, and I navigated to the media folder I'd prepared. I thought it would be fun to look back at some of our favorite memories together, starting with some recent ones. I clicked play. The hidden camera footage filled the screen in high definition. Emily and Matt, naked and writhing in my bed, completely oblivious to the fact that they were being recorded. Emily's scream could have shattered glass. Matt jumped up so fast he knocked over his chair. "What the hell?" "Sit down," I said quietly, and something in my voice made him comply. "We're just getting started." The footage continued for several minutes, long enough to establish that this wasn't some brief moment of weakness, but a full-blown, passionate affair, long enough to capture their post-coital conversation about my obliviousness and their future plans. Emily was sobbing now, her hands covering her face. "Nick, please, I can explain." "Explain?" I laughed, and the sound was harsh, even to my own ears. "Oh, sweetheart, there's nothing to explain. This is all very clear, but wait, there's more." I clicked to the next video file, security footage from the Riverside Motel, showing Emily and Matt entering and leaving room 237 on multiple occasions over the past 4 months. "The desk clerk was very helpful," I said conversationally. "Apparently you two are model guests, always polite, always discreet, always pay in cash, very professional." Matt had gone pale. "Nick, look, this isn't what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I cut him off. "But let's see what else we have here." The next file was audio only, the recordings Marcia had made of their phone conversations. Emily and Matt's voices filled the room, discussing my daily routines, my life insurance policy, and the various accidents that could befall a clumsy, middle-aged man. By the time Emily's recorded voice finished describing how easy it would be to stage my death, she was hyperventilating. "That wasn't serious," she gasped. We were just talking. People say things they don't mean when they're what?" I asked. "When they're planning to murder their husband for insurance money?" Matt found his voice. "You can't prove anything with those recordings. They could be taken out of context, edited." "Could they?" I smiled and clicked to the final file. "Let's see what the experts think." The screen filled with official-looking documents, police reports, insurance investigations, legal opinions, all fake, but convincing enough to make my point. "I've been busy," I said. Turns out conspiracy to commit murder is a very serious crime, even when it's just talk, even when you don't actually go through with it. Emily was shaking so hard she could barely speak. Nick, please, I love you. I made a mistake, but I love you. Love? I laughed again. You call planning my death love? You call sleeping with my brother in my bed love? Matt stood up again, his face flushed with anger and desperation. Okay, fine. You caught us. What do you want? Money? I can pay you. Sit down, Matt. My voice was deadly quiet. I'm not finished. He sat. I walked around the table, letting them sweat while I poured myself another glass of champagne. When I spoke again, my voice was conversational, almost friendly. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Emily, you're going to pack a bag and leave this house, tonight. You're going to move in with Matt since you two are so in love. You're going to quit your job at Morrison & Associates because I'm going to send copies of these recordings to your boss, and I don't think they'll appreciate having a would-be murderer in their HR department. Emily opened her mouth to protest, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. Matt, you're going to lose your gym. See, I've been doing some research into your finances, and it turns out you owe a lot of money to some very unforgiving people. When they find out about your little murder plot, and they will find out, I don't think they're going to be very understanding about late payments. Matt's face was purple now. You can't do this. Those recordings won't hold up in court. Who said anything about court? I smiled. I'm not going to have you arrested, Matt. That would be too easy. Too quick. No, I'm going to do something much worse. I clicked the remote one more time, and the screen filled with a list of email addresses, friends, family members, co-workers, clients of Matt's gym, parents from Emily's PTA group. I'm going to send these recordings to everyone we know, I said simply. Every friend, every family member, every professional contact. By tomorrow morning, everyone in this town will know exactly what kind of people you are. Emily was sobbing uncontrollably now. Nick, please, think about what you're doing. This will destroy us. Good, I said. That's the point. Matt lunged across the table at me, but I was ready for him. I'd been ready for weeks. The taser I'd bought online dropped him to the floor, convulsing and cursing. Violence, Matt. Really? After everything else, you want to add assault to your list of crimes? I knelt down next to my twitching brother and spoke quietly into his ear. You always thought you were better than me, didn't you? Stronger, smarter, more charming. Well, let's see how charming you are when everyone knows you're a would-be murderer who can't pay his bills. I stood up and looked at Emily, who was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. 16 years, I said. 16 years I loved you. 16 years I trusted you. 16 years I thought we were building something together, and this whole time you were just waiting for the right moment to cash in my life insurance policy. Nick, she whispered, I never would have actually gone through with it, I finished. Maybe not. Maybe you would have just taken half of everything in the divorce and run off with Matt to start your new life. But you know what? It doesn't matter. The intent was there. The planning was there. The betrayal was there. I walked back to the entertainment center and ejected a DVD from the player. This contains everything, I said, holding up the disc. Video, audio, financial records, witness statements. I've made copies, of course. Lots of copies. And tomorrow morning, unless you both disappear from my life forever, those copies are going to find their way to some very interested parties. Matt had recovered enough to sit up, though he was still shaking from the taser. What do you want from us? I want you gone, I said simply. Both of you. Out of my house, out of my life, out of this town. I want you to start over somewhere else, with nothing but the clothes on your backs and the knowledge that everyone who ever mattered to you knows exactly what you are. Emily was crying so hard she could barely breathe. Where are we supposed to go? How are we supposed to live? I don't care, I said. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy me. I walked to the front door and opened it wide. You have 1 hour to pack whatever you can carry, I said. After that, I'm sending the emails. And if I ever see either of you again, if you ever contact me or try to come back, I'll make sure the police get copies of everything too. Murder conspiracy charges might not stick, but they'll certainly make your lives interesting. Emily and Matt looked at each other, then at me, then at the open door. They knew they were beaten. They knew I had them completely, utterly destroyed. Matt was the first to move, stumbling toward the stairs to pack his things. Emily followed, still sobbing, still begging me to reconsider. I sat back down at the dining room table and poured myself another glass of champagne. The lamb was getting cold, but I didn't care. I had all the time in the world now. Exactly 57 minutes later, Emily and Matt came downstairs with 2 suitcases each. Emily's eyes were red and swollen from crying. Matt looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. "Nick," Emily said one last time, "please don't do this. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can—" "Goodbye, Emily," I said without looking up from my wine. They walked out the door and out of my life forever. I sat alone in my dining room, surrounded by the ruins of our anniversary dinner, and smiled for the first time in weeks. It was over. They were gone. I was free. But I wasn't quite finished yet. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcia's number. "It's done," I said when she answered. "They're gone. How do you feel?" I considered the question. Like I just took out the trash. "What about the recordings? Are you really going to send them out?" "Oh yes," I said. "I want everyone to know what they are. I want their names to be poison in this town. I want them to have to start over with nothing, knowing that everyone they left behind knows exactly why they had to run." "That's cold, Nick." "They were planning to kill me, Marcia. Cold doesn't begin to cover what they deserve." I hung up and walked to my computer. It took me 20 minutes to compose the email, another 10 to attach all the files, and 30 seconds to send it to everyone in my contacts list. By morning, Emily and Matt would be the most hated people in town. By the end of the week, they'd be unemployable, friendless, and completely destroyed. It was exactly what they deserved. I poured myself one last glass of champagne and raised it in a toast to the empty room. "Happy anniversary," I said to no one.